Hello, everyone. My name is Stanley St. Rose, and today we're going to be talking about Les Misérables by Victor Hugo. Now, before I go into summary analysis of this work, please remember to leave a like, subscribe, and/or comment so that the channel can continue to grow. All right, Les Misérables, Les Misérables. Very interesting work here by Victor Hugo. A lot of things are happening. A lot of things are happening. Now, we meet this man by the name of Jean Valjean, very, very great guy. I'm just gonna call him Jean going forward with this summary because there's a lot to cover. There's a lot to cover. So Jean, all right. Jean is just great. He's a great guy. He's like a modern day Superman. He's always helping people. Gene, his morals are awesome. Ethics, everything is on the up and up. His character is upright. He's just a great guy, man. He's just a great guy. He's always looking out for people. He's always doing what's right. This man, let me tell you, Gene here goes to prison for stealing bread, stealing a loaf of bread to feed his sister's starving children. Gene is just a great guy. I mean, he spends 19 years, people, 19 years in prison because, well, he tried to escape. So they add on some extra years. But altogether, between the stealing the bread and the years in prison, he spends 19 years for the bread and the escape just because he was being a great guy trying to feed his own family, all right? So very, Gene is just a great guy. He is just a great guy. After he gets out from prison, Gene goes to this town. Um he manufactures, he invents this way of developing black beads, and he becomes rich. He becomes the mayor of the town, and for a while things are looking good. But there's this cop, Javert, that's after him. Gene is living underneath a disguise, and especially the time period that this was being written in, you could get away with things like this. You put on a disguise, you change your name, you could probably escape a town, leave your town, go to another town, and if you did something really bad, you could probably escape the authorities because there's no video cameras, there's no fingerprinting, there's no crime scene investigation. It's not Law and Order. It's just, draw on a mustache, go to some other town, and you're pretty good, Change your name to Harry or whatever, and you're pretty good, right? So Gene, that's how he escapes the authorities. He changes his name. Javert has some like idea. Well, I think you're Gene, and he has to wait for some evidence, and it's not until Gene himself tells everybody that he is Gene, that they actually come after him. But he got away with it for a very long time, to the point where, okay, he got rich, he started a whole factory, he became the mayor. I mean, you became a whole mayor while the authorities are looking for you. So it's kind of crazy. So Gene here, he's doing, he's just an upright guy. He's doing all he can to be an upright guy, even though Javert is after him, and they have several encounters throughout the work. Later, Jean actually saves Javert's life, and later Javert lets Jean go. When he's like bringing Marius back to his grandfather, but we'll get to that. There's a back and forth between Jean and Javert here, to the point where Javert lets Jean goes, and then Javert throws himself in the river and commits suicide because he's like torn between doing the right thing or between arresting Jean, doing his duty, or letting Jean go. So he ends up killing himself because, like, Gene is just such a great guy, man. Could you stand against Gene? He's Gene, man. He's Gene. So yeah, don't go against Gene because Gene's awesome. All right, Gene is just awesome. So the story goes on. There's a woman by the name of Fantine. Fantine is this woman. She falls in love, like all these types of love stories. Young women, young men. A few winks here, a few tee heaves there, a few tickles, and you got a baby. All right, that's what happens. Fantine, she finds this young man. They fall in love. They do the Watusi. They get to the Watusi. And there's a baby that gets conceived, people. That we know biology. We know human biology, right? The Watusi gets done, and there's a baby on the way, and the baby's name is Cassette. Now Cassette gets born, and mommy goes into prostitution. She sells some hair, she sells some teeth. She goes into prostitution, gets some type of sexual transmitted disease. Things go downhill. She ends up dying, all right? And she does, some way, somehow, she does meets up with Gene. I mean, Gene comes in the picture, and Gene's like, listen, I'm going to find your daughter, Cassette. I'm going to bring her to you. And when that doesn't happen, Gene's like, well, I'm going to, be the adoptive father for Cassette because her mom has died, and her mom found out that I was a convict, and the mom dies in a cruel world where she fell in love with this guy, and the guy left with his friends, and the relationships didn't go too well, and the mother dies, and it's sad because love and this time period that this was being written in, it was very dark for women. I mean, the past in general is very dark for women because before the era of contraceptives and clinics and hospitals and things like that, if you got pregnant as a woman, if there wasn't a husband to help you out and there was no money coming in, having sex could just lead to your death. I mean, having sex, especially during this time period, if you get pregnant and there's nobody to help you, even if there's somebody to help you, making it through pregnancy, giving birth to the child, could also be a death sentence because there's a 50-50 chance that the baby is born and you survive too. So I mean that's a whole miracle. Like 100 years ago, 200 years ago, if you're a woman, you get pregnant, there's a 50% chance that you might live or die, and also that the baby might live or die. So life. It's great that we live in the 21st century. That's all I'm saying. So, Fantine dies, and yeah, her life was dark. She fell in love, had a kid. Lover leaves. She's all her own. She goes into prostitution to provide for the kid, and she's dead. So Cassette, Fantine, before she died, she left Cassette in the hands of these innkeepers, and the innkeepers are corrupt. They pretty much treat Cassette very badly. They abuse her. They mistreat her. It's just very bad. It's very bad. Okay, so throughout the work, what we come to find out is Gene here. He comes into contact with Cassette, and he becomes this adoptive father, trying to protect her, trying to provide for her. He actually gives the innkeepers money. He gives this dude money, and kind of like purchases Cassette, and he becomes like this adoptive father for her. Marius is this guy. He has a rich grandfather, and there's a whole political storyline that's going on. And Marius and his grandfather, they don't see eye to eye, but Marius wants to marry Cassette. All this is happening while Gene and Cassette are trying to run away from Javert because Javert just wants to bring Gene to justice. Like he has nothing else to do. And Marius falls in love with Cassette. And, the second part, or like closer to the end of the work, you kind of see this tide battle between Gene. Gene doesn't want Cassette to marry Marius, but Marius and Cassette want to be together, and Gene's like wants to be this protective father, and yeah, so there's a whole back and forth between Gene and Cassette trying to run away from Javert, and then Marius and Cassette, they're trying to establish a relationship because they do have feelings for each other. And then it's a lot. It's a lot going on. Panine is another woman that is within this work. She loves Marius. She dies for Marius. She takes a bullet for Marius, people. She takes a bullet for Marius because throughout the work you have civil unrest. People are revolting against the government, and people, there's unfairness going around, and Marius wants to protest. He almost gets killed, but you know this girl, she just steps in and saves him. She saves Marius. you know it's just, yeah, it's a lot. But the thing is, Marius doesn't love her. Marius loves Cassette. So yeah, it's a lot to take in. It's a lot to take in. So we see several different characters. Listen, this work is filled with characters. The innkeeper, he keeps coming back. He changes his name throughout the work. Somehow Gene and this innkeeper, they just keep crossing paths. Um, it just never stops. Um, they just keep crossing paths over and over again. There's points where they're robbing each other because the innkeeper and his wife, they're criminals. They're just dark criminals. Um, yeah, they have several name changes. They take care of their daughters very well. They were abusing Cassette, and they just keep crossing paths with Gene, and Gene even at some point goes to help them out. Um, throughout the work, even tries to pay their rent at some point. So that storyline keeps happening. It keeps occurring. Um, so yeah, I mean, Gene, even though that these people have treated Cassette bad, they've treated him bad, there's several points where he helps them out. Ultimately, what happens is Marius and Cassette, they do get married. Uh, Eponine dies. Again, she took a bullet for Marius. Cassette and Marius, they do get married. Gene, eventually he dies. Uh, he gets sick. He's done fighting. He's done being a hero. He's done saving people. I mean, there's so many adventures that he goes on within this work, trying to save people, trying to protect people. It's just crazy. It's just crazy. Again, there's several different characters. Javert dies. Again, he commits suicide because he's so conflicted about Gene. Do I arrest him? Do I not? He's a good guy, but he has committed some crimes. So it's between his duty, but also this higher sense of this guy is not evil. So what am I doing here? This guy is not evil. I keep going after him, and he saved my life. So he just dies. He just ends it. Again, people are not black and white. I mean, when you're a cop, society tries to tell you it's black and white, criminals and not criminals. But life is not black and white. People, a lot of people do things not because they want to, but because they have to survive. And when you're starving and you need to eat, and it's either you eat or die, some people would rather steal a loaf of bread than die. So it's a really dark thing to. It's just a really dark thing to process. So yeah, Gene, he finally dies. Marius and Cassette, they end up together. Um, the innkeeper and his wife. Um, that's a whole nother story. These people are just evil. They'll do anything to get a buck. But the innkeeper, he survives. Yeah, in terms of deeper meaning and analysis, I mean, this work, again, people, it is a lot. There's a lot to get into here between the rebels and the government and the protests and the fighting and the people deceiving each other. But again, the work here is Les Miserables. In French, we're talking about misery, the miserable ones. So there's a lot of misery. There's a lot of poverty. There's a lot of unrest. The government and the people, they're fighting. Not enough food, not enough money, not enough opportunities. And this is France. I mean, listen, you know about the French Revolution. Although this is not the French Revolution that's taking place within the background within this work, still, we know Europe, okay? Europe is the most, from my perspective, Europe has to be the bloodiest place on earth in terms of rape, pillaging, killing, revolutions, wars. I don't think there's no bigger graveyard on earth than in Europe. Yes, people have been dying on the planet forever. Yes, China, Africa, there's been great wars and battles and people killing each other since you know societies have been forming around the world. But in modern history, in modern history, um, I don't know what place on earth would you say would be the most bloodiest, horrific, darkest. I mean, Europe is the guillotine, people. Europe is boiling people alive, people. Europe is stabbings and man, especially France. I mean, France is like, whew. So, just let your mind run wild what these people are doing each other in terms of the poor versus the rich, because Europe invented that, all right? The French invented killing um, royalty, all right? Well, they didn't invent it, but you guys know what I mean. They put it on the map. They put it on the map. I mean, yes, Rome, and Russia, and there's different places where this has been a thing, but the French made it fancy, all right. The French made killing people or rich people, however, they made it fancy. They kill people while having wine, all right. So there's lots of fighting. It gets bloody, but at the same time, there's Marius and Cassette and the love story there, and um, you know, there's several little mini stories within Les Miserables. There's all types of misery. The title does fit the purpose. There's all types of misery. There's romantic misery. All right, there's romantic misery in terms of um Eponine. That woman, man, she loved um Marius. She, again, I'm butchering these names, but she loved Marius. She took a bullet for him, and she dies in misery because her love is never, it's never expressed. It's never reciprocated. Okay, it's never confirmed. It's never nourished. You know, it's really sad when you see someone pining for somebody else, but they're never. It's really hard, It's really hard when somebody loves someone to the point of death, but that person doesn't love you back. Love you back. It's probably one of the most painful things on earth to love somebody that deeply, but they don't love you the same way. It's hard. It's hard. There's all types of misery. There's misery of people not being together, people who want to be together. There's misery in the rebels. They're starving, they're hungry, they're poor, and the rich is just fighting against them. Um, there's misery in people trying to redeem themselves when they've done things bad and they just want to do good. Um, yeah, this is definitely a sad work. It's definitely a sad work. I mean, the ending, even the good guy, man, even Gene had to die, man. Gene's the ultimate good guy, but ultimately Gene dies. There's some warm and cozy moments between Cassette and Gene and Marius at the end. They do reconcile, and he dies a peaceful death, but overall, it's it's the miserable ones, people. It's the miserable ones. Yeah. So this is just, yeah. I mean, there's so many ways you can interpret this novel in terms of the meaning analysis, from the poor versus the rich, um, goodness, um, you know how how does goodness stay good while being consumed by darkness? because Gene had so many opportunities to become evil and hateful and to truly become a rebel, to truly become a monster, but he never does. How does he do that? How does he stay good in darkness? How does he stay light in darkness? Um, what are you willing to pay for true love? What are you willing to sacrifice for true love? That's something that appears within this work. What is what is justice? What is right? You know, there's I mean with Javert, his whole thing is like I want to do my duty, but at the same time, is your duty right? I mean, he's a cop doing what cops do, but Gene is not an evil man. So going after a man that's not evil, arresting him, punishing him, it's like, what am I doing here? Yes, I have to do my job, but at the same time, like, what am I doing? You know? It's like this with Javert. The way I look at it, it's like if a cop was trying to arrest Santa Claus for delivering presents, because technically Santa Claus is committing a crime by coming into your house and giving you gifts in the middle of the night. It is breaking and entering, people. So if a cop arrests Santa Claus, technically the cop would be right because it is breaking and entering. So it's like, do you arrest Santa though? I mean, this is like a ridiculous example, but you kind of get what I'm saying. It's like Gene is Santa. Like, do you arrest Santa for burglary? Cause he is. I mean, he's coming in through the chimney. He's not breaking any doors, but he didn't get any consent or permission to come through your chimney. Or did he? Well, no. I mean, there's nobody telling Santa to like come through their chimney. Santa is just coming into the chimney and delivering presents. I mean, I'm pretty sure nobody will press charges against Santa, but still, what if somebody's not Christian, or maybe somebody doesn't celebrate Christmas and Santa still delivers presents? Okay, let me get off this Santa ladder that I'm on. You get what I'm saying though. Yeah, it's a lot. It's a lot. Again, I think I've had enough of talking about this book. I mean, the whole Santa Claus thing has gotten out of hand. Anyway, that's my summary analysis of this book. Please remember to leave a like, subscribe, and or comment, and I'll see you guys in the next video.